Good afternoon and welcome to the second concurrent session of the day, Equity in the Classroom. Our presenter today is Manjunath Burdekar, faculty member at Concord University. If you have any questions for the presenter during the session, please feel free to enter those into the Q&A section at the bottom of the Zoom room screen, and we will address them at the end of the talk. On that note, I will hand it over to our presenter.
Great. Thank you, Kate. Yes, as Kate mentioned, I am Dr. Burdekar. I am a faculty member at a small institution in West Virginia, Concord University, and I'll be talking today about equity in the classroom. I'll provide a number of different information regarding equity in the classroom, and I also want to thank you all for being here. I also want to thank Hawks Learning for providing me this opportunity to present here for you today. So without further ado, let's get into what equity in the classroom looks like, or what it means, and how do you actually do it. So what does equity in the classroom mean? It basically means making sure every student has the resources and support that they need to be successful. Right, providing resources that the student needs, and this can be a variety of different resources, so they can be successful in the classroom. This comes from a mindset of from an individual mindset. This is not a community mindset. This is looking at individual student, because every individual student is different and unique in their own way. So equity equals respect. Equity in the classroom can be defined as giving students what they need. When teachers truly listen to students and respect in the classroom is mutual between the teacher and the student, a productive classroom can be formed. Teachers feel good about the lesson they teach, and students are engaged in learning. So when we provide this environment for the students, they are better able to adapt and feel respected, which then leads them to feel like they can perform well. We do know from several research, when we provide an equitable environment, students tend to excel in the classroom. Because if we look at equity from a standpoint of respect, we can really help change our own perspective on how we teach and treat our students in the classroom. The next part is looking at the differences between equity and equality. People have probably seen a variety of different examples of this picture here on the side of equality and equity. So what does this mean? Equality is generic. It is group focused and it's equal for everyone, right? Equity, on the other hand, is adaptable. It's individual focused and fair, okay? So as I said earlier, when we're looking at equality, we're providing equality for a group of people. When we're providing equity, we're focusing on the individual and looking at how we can provide resources so they're on the same wavelength, rather than equality where everyone gets the same resources. Okay, so equity isn't handing a kid a laptop. Okay, it's knowing the systemic conditions that led to the lack of the laptop and working to mitigate them, right? So again, going back to here, equality, okay, everyone gets a laptop, great, but equity goes another mile here. Equity is not only giving laptop, but understanding why that laptop is important for that student, but also teaching them how to use that laptop on an individual basis. And I think that's important, so we can reduce the issues that might come up for that student. We can provide people with different resources, but if we don't teach them how to use those resources. Providing them the resources doesn't mean anything for them. If they don't know how to use it, they might forget that they have those resources. So these factors should never hold students back from reaching their full learning potential. And these are some of the factors that do hold students to reach full potential. So race, culture, gender, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, immigration status, individual experiences, socioeconomic status, and sometimes ability and disability, right? It's both. We know that there are students who are really high on IQ, and they're placed in a classroom where they are bored. And trying to figure that out is equity, okay? Steps towards equity. Know every child, know your students, know every student that comes into your classroom that you're in contact with. Become a warm demander, right? You have to be demanding of the students. However, when we're demanding, we need to be mindful that we're kind, caring, and warm. Practice lean in assessments, okay? Flex your routines. Make it safe to fail. View culture as a resource. Make it safe to fail. This is something that I talk to my students all the time. It's okay to be wrong, okay? It's okay to make mistakes. You're going to learn a whole lot about yourself, and you're going to learn to fix those mistakes. This is important when we're talking about equity. A lot of people in the classroom know the answer, but yet don't say anything because they're afraid that they might make a mistake. So hence, it's very, very important that we push our students to take part in equity, even in the classroom. So here are 10 ways to pursue excellence through equity. Challenge the normalization of failure, as we just talked about. Speak up for equity, embrace immigrant students and their culture. It is very, very important to do that. Provide students clear guidance on what it takes to succeed. Build partnership with parents based on shared interests. Again, this might be a little bit different in terms of build partnership with parents based on shared interest. If they're over 18, that might be hard to do. However, if there are parents who are coming to visit your school, maybe it's important that you build those relationships with their parents as well. Align discipline practice to educational goals. Rethink remediation focus on acceleration. Implement evidence-based practice and evaluate for effectiveness. Build partnership with community to address student needs, and teach the way students learn rather than expecting them to learn the way we teach. It's really, really important to work with our students to try different teaching styles, okay? Rather than expecting the students will learn in the same old style where the professor is standing up and lecturing, and the expectation is that the student will just take in the information. I think we really need to switch the way we teach. I think it needs to be much more of a community learning where we're learning from each other rather than the teacher being the expert and teacher telling the entire class about the material. So here are different ways to strive for excellence through equity. Here are some techniques to help model equity in the classroom. Hold your students to high expectations. Students will perform as well as you expect them to. Don't let assumptions based on past grade attitudes and other external factors color your opinion of students. This is very, very common. We know that we have not so great student and we get biased because of this, and that shouldn't be the case. We should be very, very careful of how we work with such students. Some students who are not doing well might have issues at home, might be having some mental health issues, might be having physical issues. They might be going through some difficult time at home personally, or even in their professional lives. So be mindful of that. Get to know your students, get to know them about them as an individual. In informal and formal conversation, check your assumptions. Instead of asking students how their Christmas was, here's an example, ask them what they did during their winter break. Because we know that not everyone celebrates Christmas. I think having that thought process is very, very important. Keep discussion questions open-ended to accommodate a range of responses and lived experiences. Remember that our lived experiences can be very, very different than the people around us. So we need to be mindful of that. Also being mindful of where people come from, their experiences, but also their culture, and how that can dictate us in helping them in the classroom and outside of the classroom. Don't shy away from hard conversations. Students of all ages are still grappling with the effects of COVID-19, questions about racial justice and other pressing issues. Open space in your classroom to have difficult conversations honestly and empathetically is important. It can be very difficult for some students to verbalize what they're feeling, okay? Sometimes it might be helpful to normalize that. It's also important to talk about your own feelings about COVID-19, about racial justice, or any kind of issue, any political issue, or any kind of social cultural issues that is causing issues for our students. A lot of our students are aware of these issues but can't talk about it because they're afraid to. Also, they might not know that there is a safe space where they can have these conversations. If you're providing a safe space in the classroom, make sure you provide it for all different groups. Make sure that they are able to openly talk about these things, even if their assumptions are wrong, because we're in an educational setting. We have to provide an environment where people feel comfortable to speak, and also understanding that we might make mistakes. I think that's a huge part. I tell my students all the time, I'm not perfect. I think it's important to make those mistakes in order for us to learn as well. So, ways teachers can promote equity in the classroom: use random response strategies, ask challenging questions for all students. Don't pick on the same people that raise their hand and want to eagerly answer. It's important to get diverse answers. Use multiple ways of assessing student understanding. Okay, it shouldn't just be an exam. There's got to be different ways where people are assessed, where students are assessed for their understanding. Create classroom rules collaboratively and enforce them fairly. So whenever we're creating a classroom rules, I ask students, is this good? Is this working? Is it not working? What can we do? Should we change certain rules? We have to really move away from this authoritarian style of teaching to much more of a collaborative style of teaching, where students feel connected, but also they feel like their input is taken seriously. Seek multiple perspective and different answers to question. As I said, people come from very, very different lived experiences, and it's very important that we push students to have them speak about these variety of different issues. The other part that I've also learned is that people who don't say a whole lot actually have the most to say. They feel like they don't get the opportunity to speak. And sometimes it's necessary and important to get those students to talk in the classroom. Show students the why behind how things are done when possible. Students might not ask the question why directly, but it's our job as teachers and professors and educators to help students know the why. I have understood and realized that when we answer the question why to our students, they're much more likely to follow through, rather than saying things like, I told you so, or saying things like, I am your professor, I'm your teacher, I'm going to ask you to do this, so you're going to do it. No, I think it's important to explain to the students that this is why it's important for you to do it. It's important for you to get a good grade, because it's going to help you in the future, something along those lines. Acknowledge every student's comment or response, even if it's incorrect. And not criticizing students when they're wrong, but helping them understand why the information that they have provided is incorrect. Again, this is how students grow. This is how students change their mindset from a fixed mindset to much more of a growth mindset. Keep all religious holidays in mind when creating your schedules, not just holiday school is closed for. Because what happens is you might have a student in your classroom that doesn't celebrate Christmas. They might celebrate something else. And when you're aware that this student is from this particular background and you wish them their religious holiday, they feel really good about themselves. They feel good about you as a professor or a teacher, and also they feel supported in that environment because now they probably feel like they connect with you. Teach appropriate language around asking questions about other students' cultures. Always remember, one student isn't a representative of the entire culture, but they can share their specific experience. So growing up in the US, I personally had this experience where I felt like I was a spokesperson for one particular group. And I always thought that didn't make sense. How can I talk about other people's lived experience when that might not be accurate? My lived experience is completely different than other people's lived experiences. And hence, I think it's very, very important for us as faculty members to be mindful of this and collaborate with students to help them understand cultures that are different or are not known to them. So these play an important role in promoting equity in the classroom. So tips of using equity to create an inclusive classroom. So I'm going to provide a little bit of tips here. Remember that every student is different and has unique needs. Evaluate any challenges that students face and, if needed, offer support or resources. This is really hard to do sometimes. However, I think it's very important that we get to know our students at a personal level, not just a number in the classroom. It's getting to know them as to understanding their lived experiences, whether it's through questions in the classroom or whether it's trying different strategies to get to know them, meeting with them one-on-one, if that's possible. I know if you're at a very big institution, it's a little bit hard, but I think if you provide that space, students will come seek and talk to you. Some reach out to you just to say hello. Some reach out to you for a long conversation. But it's important that we get to know our students because that plays an important role in building an equitable classroom. There are times that where students will participate in the classroom because there is a little bit of nudge from the faculty. And by this, you can get a whole lot of perspective from that student. Cultivate an environment in your classroom where every student feels heard. Encourage them to speak out against unfairness and let you know if they're facing any hardship at home or in class. This is important, encouraging them to speak out against unfairness, okay, and providing them the opportunity to talk about it. There are a lot of times where people are dismissed when they are treated unfairly. I think this plays an important role for people feeling heard. And we need our students to be felt heard because they are our future. Parents' engagement is a particularly helpful way to resolve challenges involving equity. Sometimes parents might not even know what equity is, and teaching them about what equity means. It doesn't mean it's equality. It's something a little bit different, helping them understand. Keep open communications with parents and encourage them to volunteer or attend school events to involve them with their child's education. Again, this can be for younger kids, for high school and below, but it can also be helpful for college students. But please be mindful that parents are not being as engaged with their child's life or their student's life at a college level, because I think it's important that the student themselves need to take authority of their own life. Providing equity training in schools for faculty members so teachers know how to resolve common barriers, having these conversations, right? So knowing what the issues are, focusing on equity issues. And finally, add diversity and inclusion activities as well as lessons against prejudice to your school curriculum so every student feels like they belong. This is very, very important. I know that whenever the issues or issues around diversity and inclusion come into play, people want to shy away from these issues. And one of the things that I like to tell other students, faculty, staff is that lean into these issues. I mean, if it's not you, who else can do this? If you make mistakes, it's okay. Tell people that I'm going to make mistakes. It's okay. We're all here to learn from each other. And I think that's very, very important. Remote and hybrid learning. It was important for me to put this in here because a lot of our students and faculty are either learning or teaching from remote and hybrid way. So this has a dramatically highlighted existing inequalities among students. Some best practice to ensure equity include deliver a mix of in-person activities and pre-recorded lessons, especially if you have hybrid learning places. Give timeframes to complete assignments and tests so students can complete them around their schedule. Be mindful of this. One of the things that I have learned with remote and hybrid learning is that if you provide good schedules and stick to those schedules, students are much more likely to follow them. Majority of the students are likely to follow schedules that are consistent. When you start moving around your schedule, that's when students get confused and don't know when assignments are due. Once they're put on the syllabus, I think it's very important that we stick to our schedule. If there's an exam on this particular day, or there's an assignment due on this particular day, I think it's very, very important that we stick to them and not move them around, because once we start moving things around, students get confused. Work with students and respect their needs. Connect with them to understand their situations and find solutions. Provide fun video backgrounds, or let students leave cameras off. Not all students will be comfortable letting their class get a glimpse into their home. This is an equity issue. Some students don't want to know what's happening in their houses. They don't want other people to know what type of homes they live in, because some people might feel embarrassed to show their friends, friends, their home life. So be mindful of this, not to push people to open their cameras all the time. Champion your students, get to know them and encourage them to succeed. I think this is very, very important. Pushing students to do well, but also challenging them when they need it, and helping them with constructive criticism, in, of course, a supportive and a kind and caring manner. No one likes constructive criticism, but I think it's very, very important that we provide that to them so they grow as individuals. Build equity in the classroom by promoting the voices of your students. Try these strategies to make sure involvement is equitable. Seek out the perspective of students who don't share as much. I think I mentioned this earlier, that there are students who sit in the corner who are really, really intelligent, but won't say a whole lot because that's their personality. And make sure that outgoing students don't dominate. This is true a lot of the times, where students who are extroverted will raise their hand or just blurt out answers, which then leads to the students who identify as introverts that they don't want to respond. So being mindful of having that balance, because the introverted student might have a different point of view compared to the extroverted students. Find ways for students to offer input in different ways. Class discussions are a great tool, but not every student feels comfortable sharing with the whole class. Set up an online forum or hold office hours for one-on-one discussions with students, so you not only get to know them, but also get to know their point of view. Class discussions are a great tool, as I mentioned, and not every student feels comfortable sharing in the whole class. So what I've done is put them in different groups, so they're at least sharing in those groups. And then I have students who is a recorder and who is also the speaker. So that doesn't put a demand on the student who does not want to talk. Implement the feedback students give. When students that you value their input, when students see that you value their input and take it seriously, they understand that their voices and opinion matter. Every so often, I take feedback from the students. I actually give them a piece of paper that has a number of different questions, and ask them what's working, what's not working, where are some of the ways that we can improve, what are the things that we need to keep, and actually taking that feedback and implementing into the classroom. Not every single one of them, but some of them. So it's a shared teaching environment, or a shared learning environment, I should say, where there is learning and teaching from both sides, and the students are going to get a whole lot out of that. Every student has a unique experience and perspective. Harness them. It is our job as educators to push and get information from our students. Equity in the classroom is a process, not an immediate result. This takes a lot of time. This takes a lot of patience. This takes a lot of listening. Promoting equity can have a whole host of benefits for every student in your classroom. So as you take a step back and understand what the student is saying and what the student is feeling, I think you can provide a different environment for all students. If there is one student who's feeling a particular way, there are more students who are feeling the same way. So be mindful of that. Equity shouldn't just be found in the classroom, though. A school culture of equity is one where educators create a classroom, school, and a system where excellence is achieved for every student, no matter what that student is or where that student comes from. In a school culture of equity, excellence and success become the norm of each student and every educator. So when we create a culture of equity, when we create a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion, our environment starts to change very, very quickly. We start seeing students thriving in this environment and doing well for themselves, and also doing well for the system and our community. So coming from that point of view is very, very important. And why is equity so important in the schools? So this is, I think, my final slide. An equitable education system helps all students develop the knowledge and skills they need to be engaged and become a productive member of society. More importantly, giving all children an equitable start would lead to better economic and social outcomes for individuals, for regions, and for our nation. So providing an equitable environment from the start can have a ripple effect for everyone, where once you have everyone at the same place, when there's equity, they're able to thrive and do well in the environment, and hopefully do well in the fields and the careers that they go in. And they might also remember to do what is right through equity to other people as well, which then has more ripple effect moving forward. Again, the final sentence here is, more importantly, giving all children an equitable start would lead to a better economic and social outcomes for individuals, for regions, and for our nation. So please be mindful of that. With that, I would like to end our workshop here. If you have any questions, I am happy to answer any questions. I thought it was going to go for full 45 minutes, but we're at close to 35 minutes here, so we have more time for any conversations.
Thank you so much for all the valuable information. We have no questions posted in the Q&A as of now, but we do have a few moments that we can take those questions if we need to, or any feedback or anything from anyone. But if not, thank you so much for all the valuable information that you shared with us today.
Definitely.
Do you have any other suggestions for online classrooms?
Yeah, so good question. Again, online classroom is interesting, but it's also important to understand that we are still learning what online learning looks like, what online classroom looks like, especially after COVID. A lot of things have changed. I will say this. I think earlier I mentioned that having schedules is important, but what I've also learned is with online learning that it's also important to not be open to providing students a lot more time for online class, because they're also learning how to do and learn everything on the fly. So it might actually take them a little longer to learn. So let's assume that you have something due this Friday. So you have something due today, but not being a little more flexible can be helpful, because we don't know what's happening in their life. So rather than the student might reach out to you and say, well, I need more time. Will you be willing to provide me more time? And I've gone the route of providing more time and actually not taking points off. One of the reasons is because we don't know, not taking points off for the substance being late. So one of the reasons being that we don't know what students are going through, and especially when it's online, we can't see the student, so we can't judge, what students are going through. So I think that's an important aspect of that.
We did have another question. How do you balance instruction when there are disparities among students in terms of language ability, balancing the pace when there are both native English speakers and English language learners in the same classroom?
Yeah, so this is very interesting. I actually have a student from Brazil in my classroom, and and people have different thought process around this. Um, he took a first exam and he didn't do that great on the first exam. And we had a conversation as to what was going on to help him do better. And one of the things that I learned is that he had a difficult time with English, and how certain words were put together on an exam. So he asked me if it was if it was okay for him to use a translator, and I said yes. So also, he said that it's interesting how students are the ones asking about this. He said, how are you going to be hold me accountable if I cheat? So I said, he usually sits in the back. So I told him, why don't you come in the front and sit right in the front, and you can use a translator. That was one of the experiences that I've had. I have met with students one-on-one to help them, understand the instruction that is provided in the classroom. If they don't understand something, and we know that student is struggling, it is very, very important for us to reach out to them, because what happens is it's going to linger, and they might not stay at an institution if they feel like they're not supported. This same student came back and said thank you, and he did a lot better. And I know that he did not cheat, because he used the entire translation system right in front of me. So in that way, it was helpful to help the student with language ability. I hope that answers your question.
Great. Can you talk a bit about how to promote equity when building assignments? How can we achieve equity while also ensuring that students meet the course competencies and learning outcomes?
Yeah, this is a little bit difficult. However, I think we sometimes don't know, right, who our students are when we build certain assignments. So it is important that we provide a diverse assignment. It just shouldn't be multiple choice exams. I think we should assess students on different things: presentations, group activities, using modern technology in order to have them learn in different styles. And one of them, and some of you might think this is silly, but I asked students for one of my classes, rather than doing a full-on presentation, they do a TikTok. Okay. They had so much fun doing that. It builds community within the students, but it also builds a community in the classroom. I also do things like send me a meme about, a thing that you learned about. Trying to change our own thought process around it. What do the students want? How are they learning? What is it? And what is different about their learning styles? I think that is very, very important for us to understand. As I said, each of my classes are different. My 101s are very different compared to my 400 level courses. So in I tend to also use different language in my 101 compared to my 400 level courses. In 101, I am much more talking at an 8th grade level. I think that is very important, that our English speaking should be, for me at least, at an 8th grade level so everyone understands. But for my 400 level, I'm using a little bit higher level words, so that and I know that those students understand those words much more in that way. So be mindful of that as well when you're putting everything together.
How do you handle students with disabilities who may make suggestions to changing your teaching strategies?
Follow them. I think that's one of the important pieces. Follow them. Again, it's important to understand that you might not be able to change every single thing, but it's important that you work with the student. For example, I'll say this happened yesterday. I had a student who has a disability, and he gave me his disability forms, and one of the things that was on there was he wanted to take a test um, um, outside of the classroom, but this was a little bit of different take. He wanted me to read him the questions. I know this takes a little bit more from us as educators. However, the impact on the student is much greater. So being mindful, but also being creative in the strategies is also important, and being careful as well. And working with the student is important.
Have you any specific suggestions for inviting our employers to assist us in ongoing, long-term and extensive work of making institutions more equitable? I can work and overwork in my classroom and office and student hours, but if my institution cannot be more supportive, I fear burnout will claim me before retirement does. Any specific suggestions for inviting support of the institution?
Unfortunately, I don't. Let me reread this. Have you have any specific suggestions for inviting our employers to assist us in? Unfortunately, I don't have specifics, but I'm more than happy to talk about equity, diversity, equity, and how that's important in the workplace. Yes, that's all I can say.
And how to create an equitable environment when there are students who have diverse learning abilities, for example, students with neurodiverse backgrounds.
Yeah, this is something I think a lot of faculty are struggling with, especially with students who have different or neurodiverse backgrounds. I think it's important that we educate ourselves as to what these issues look like, what they are. I'm a psychologist, so I know a lot about neurodiversity and how it impacts people. That's one piece. But the other piece is also learning to read or learn their language. I think that's important. It's very interesting, and this is an ongoing learning and understanding piece is of individuals with neurodiversity, is how do we communicate with individuals of such background? How do we learn from them? There is a lot to learn from them as well. I think that's very important piece.
Well, thank you so much. There was one last comment to check with your college. The college has some colleges have disability centers that will record the reading of tests for faculty, and they work with us to be sure how we would want it read to the student.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And the student was the one who actually asked if it was okay for me to read to him rather than the disabilities office. So I agreed.
Well, thank you so much. It looks like we are out of time. Thank you so much for all the valuable information you shared with us today. The next session is our lunch keynote speaker, Dr. Jackie Leone. You can view the chat for the session meeting link or access the conference website for a complete list of concurrent sessions and their descriptions. While accessing the conference website, don't forget to swing by the virtual exhibit hall to say hello to the Hawks team. While there, you can view a quick 5-minute demonstration, request your t-shirt, and be entered to win an hourly giveaway. Also, in the spirit of St. Patrick's Day, you'll find a few golden coins throughout the conference website. Click on the coins to be entered to win an additional raffle, and we will see you at the next session.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.